I think most of the people who are gonna come have arrived. So
Right on.
without further ado, I'm gonna kick us off. Darwin, can you give us a little intro?
Yeah, yeah. So for anybody that might be new to me or doesn't know me, my name is Nick Rakestraw. I go by Darwin or Darwin on the Trail, which is a trail name that I got back in 2015 on the Appalachian Trail. I am a Triple Crown hiker, which means that I've done the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. In the last 9 years, I have done just over 14,000 miles of long distance hiking, and then obviously a ton of backpacking, bike packing, climbing, traveling all around the world. So you can say that I like to walk. So yeah, yeah, I've had quite a bit of experience in the backcountry and reaching way back. First fell in love with backpacking, hiking, and all of that. Um, Probably through Boy Scouts and stuff like that. Pretty traditional kind of Midwestern kid in Boy Scouts getting out in the outdoors and hiking and backpacking. And then that carried over for kind of a lifelong obsession. I would definitely call it an obsession over the last 9 years. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm originally from Indiana, Evansville, Indiana, for anybody that might be from Evansville. Are you from Evansville and you're in the chat? I'd be interested if anybody's from Evansville here. There's no real outdoor stuff to do in Evansville. That's why I ask. But I now reside in Flagstaff, Arizona. So I get a big outdoor playground in my backyard, literally. So
Thanks, Darwin. My name is Don. I'm a product marketing manager at onX. I've been here for about 3 years now, and deeply involved in the outdoor recreation space. I am also a lover of walking and of Triple Crown as well. So love a good long walk. A lot of my work and passion, as you could imagine, are kind of intertwined. So I consider myself a very lucky duck to be able to pursue my passion as work. I'm really happy to be here and talking shop about something that comes naturally to me. So thanks everyone else for joining for the talk.
yeah, I find it always weird to say that it's what I do for a living. It's a job. Like I walk and talk to cameras for a living. It's weird to say that it's my job for sure.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not bad.
in terms of what's on our agenda today, we already went through our introductions, but what we really want to accomplish today is talking about how to get into backpacking, how to plan a backpacking trip, and see a little bit about how onX as a mapping application helps you plan, execute, and even share and relive a backpacking trip. Um, and we'll see how we can use it both in the planning phase, but also in the field. And if you stick around for the end of this webinar, we're going to do a little giveaway as well as some question and answer sessions. So you can ask away. Feel free to ask in the chat in the Q&A chat specifically, and we'll make sure that we get to as many as we can. But with that being said, uh, as a thank you for joining us here live, I want to offer a crazy discount, 70% off a Backcountry Premium or Elite membership for the folks that are on the call. So feel free to give that a scan or visit that little URL, and you can enjoy Backcountry Premium for $5 or Elite for $30, which is a screaming deal.
Dang, that's a
I won't leave it up.
crazy deal.
Yeah, to sell us on it, Darwin. Well, we're gonna
So
spend
like
an hour.
you have like
What was that?
wacky wavy inflatable flailing arm tube men's in the back. Like, that's a crazy deal. Scan the QR code now.
You're going to see how crazy of a deal it is once we go into what the product offers. It's a really robust platform for exactly what we're going to talk about, which is
It
backpacking.
is. Yeah, no,
Um,
it's phenomenal. It for what you actually get in Onyx, like for that is actually crazy. As much as I've used it over like especially the last year. Like yeah, yeah, pretty good.
the other thing we want to offer you too is stick around until the end, and we're giving away 5 onX Backcountry hats, as well as 5 onX Backcountry Elite memberships, which are valued at $100 at full price. And if you already have a membership, you can gift that to a friend too. So don't be shy if you want it and already have a paid subscription. So please stick around until the end. We'll be doing a fun kind of like draw and giveaway after the Q&A.
Nice.
Awesome. And then one last plug, near and dear to my heart. You can read the slide there, but onX has been doing a lot of access and stewardship, specifically in the Mountain West recently, and specifically in my backyard. So we just gave a grant to the Sage Trail Alliance, which restores old and abandoned trails for mountain biking, hiking, trail running, and other activities like hunting. And they just restored two major trails that were abandoned for a couple of decades in the Pine Mountain area, which was only made possible through the grants program. So what's really awesome about onX and part of the reason why I love working here is we every year we donate money in the form of grants, but we also protect and conserve natural spaces for public access use. And to date, we've saved over 150,000 acres of land that's been opened up to the public for recreational use, which is really awesome to have a company that's both creating a product for use in the outdoors, but also protecting the spaces that we recreate in. So just taking a moment to appreciate that, and part of your purchase goes to that anytime you support us financially. So appreciate it in advance. But
Definitely.
enough of that plug. Let's jump in a little bit here.
That's a good plug though,
Um,
man. That's a damn good plug.
that's what I care about, at least. Supporting the public lands that we recreate on is
Yes, sir.
hard to come by these days. So I really appreciate it. We're going to be talking a lot about the product today from the hike mode perspective, but we actually have multi-activity modes. So we have a hike mode, we have a mountain bike mode, we have a climb mode, and we have a backcountry ski and split board mode. And all of those have different rich content for each of those specific activities and different. Well, I'll show a little bit more about that, the layers and the kind of trails that go into that as well as like specific tools for those activities. But today we're going to be concentrating on hike more than the others. So just keep that in mind. But there is a plethora of other resources within the app for you to experience. One thing to note about hike mode is it's about 650,000 miles of trail, and about a quarter million of that comes from the hiking project. As well as outdoor projects. So we integrated with these two really big platforms. There's an extensive database of hiking trails with difficulty ratings, comments, photos, user reviews, descriptions, and a lot more. That makes it a really great place for finding a trail or finding an area where you might want to recreate. And we'll show you a little bit about that once we hit the map. But just wanted to plug that as well.
Yeah,
And with
that's really been nice for me, not to bump in, but that's really been nice for me because I'm a big time bike packer and get out on a lot of trails around here just to ride, just to kind of stay in shape, riding shape. And also like I've really dove into climbing, mountaineering and a lot of alpine stuff. So for me, like just a lot of workouts where I'll go out and just like do kind of a rock scrambly route, do a hike out to a certain section and then switch over the mode from my hike mode to the actual climb mode and then figure out a route that I can do without having too much gear and stuff like that with me. So that has been like super, super invaluable to me over just like the past probably 6 months of really getting in shape for this winter, like waiting for snow to hit so I can actually go play in some snowy mountains, but getting out like around Flagstaff and just climbing some pretty basic climbing routes just to stay in climbing shape. Like I absolutely love, that's one of my absolute favorite features about the app.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Darwin. Yeah, we try to be for any kind of human powered travel. We try to kind of cover the gamut there and constantly adding trails. We partner with local experts to create regional classics, which are like the must dos of a certain area, and we create guidebook level content for things like skiing and backpacking. So yeah, awesome to know that it's getting used.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
to kind of pull out a little bit, I'd love to talk about backpacking specifically, and I'd love to kind of ask you, Darwin, how did you get started? You've been going for 9 years, but what was your start, and what were some of like the key switches in your head that turned you on to like, hey, I can do this. I actually really like this, and I want to pursue this.
Yeah, I mean, again, like kind of going way back, I guess I probably originally got into backpacking when I was a kid, probably in Boy Scouts and stuff like that. Then fell out of it for years, through middle school, high school, got married. And then at some point, a few years after I was married, I kind of got the hiking bug again. Like I wanted to get outside. And again, like I'm from Southern Indiana, so there wasn't much to do around there. So we would usually drive over to Illinois. There's a place called Garden of the Gods, in Shawnee National Forest, or we would go over to the famous Red River Gorge and just outside of Lexington, Kentucky. We're great backpacking there. And I started getting into it, and I got my wife into it, who my wife had never even car camped whenever we first got married. So I took her on our first car camping trip. And then that kind of developed into a thing where we would just get out and do kind of weekend backpacking trips. And we were slowly figuring it out as we went. And I think whenever anybody gets into backpacking, especially if you're brand new into it, there's some pretty big barriers of entry, right? And probably one of the biggest barriers of entry is kind of just not having enough confidence, like maybe not having enough confidence in gear, in food, where you're going to get your water, how you gonna, if you're going for an extended period of time, like how you're going to resupply. And then obviously navigation is a big one, right? Like, do I need to use a paper map? Do I need to find information about where the trailheads are on something like Google? Like now, then like hiking apps. I didn't have any hiking apps when we started getting into it, right? So it was just like, oh yeah, you just kind of researched, you figured something out, you possibly got. I remember going to Red River Gorge. There's a real famous gas station right before you get into the gorge. There's a tunnel. Um, and they used to sell a little backcountry map in there. Somebody locally made it. And that's what we would, every time we went, it was just like a crappy paper map. We would just go in there, we would pick that up, and that's what we would use, right? So um, slowly overdoing it time and time again, we got inspired to go do the Appalachian Trail in 2015. We got rid of 95% of the things we own. We moved into a minivan. We went out and hiked the AT. Rest is history, right? But I think that where, backpacking started really getting comfortable with me and it really started making a lot of sense to me is when I started getting more confident because I was just doing it more, right? So I was obviously using my gear more. So I got more confident using gear. I was, um, actually hiking in general. So like, you start out and you're only doing a couple miles a day. I remember like whenever we started the AT, I think we were doing 8 miles a day. And then, over time, like then it's 15 miles and it's 20 miles because you get more confident in your abilities. And same with navigation on trail. The more you do it, whether it's a paper map or using an app, the more you actually use it and learn it. And especially like, I always say like make mistakes. Get out, actually do something and start making mistakes. Like that's the best way to learn is by screwing up basically. And you do it enough and you start to learn how to do it and then you just get more confident in it. So I would say like getting confident into backpacking really came from just spending a lot of time out on trail using things, whether it was gear, whether it was my own brain, my feet, or navigation software or maps, map and compass, stuff like that. So yeah, I think with the kind of the question that's on the slide here, how do you start backpacking? Obviously, it's, doing research is good. I think sometimes you can do a little too much research. I think you can kind of fall down these rabbit holes and you get too much information. So I think the best way to do it is just to kind of take little bits of information here and there from other people, other people's experiences, and then just get out and do it and make mistakes. Get out in the field, use your gear, and you just kind of figure it out. And I think that is definitely the best way to do it. Because again, I think the biggest barrier of entry is confidence. Like people just aren't confident in the new thing they're getting into. And that goes for anything, not just backpacking, right? That gets you can put that on anything in life. Yeah.
Great answer. Yeah, it's funny that you said you did 8 miles on the Appalachian Trail.
Hmm.
My first day on the Appalachian Trail, I didn't even make it to the terminus. I slept on the approach trail. Like
Nice,
it's
nice.
very, you got to start somewhere is so true. And I found actually that I haven't done this personally, but I've seen it work really successfully is people will do dry runs. So let's say you bought a tent and you're not sure how it's going to work. set it up in the backyard, set it
Yeah.
up in the backyard and sleep on it. Set it up on a trail that's 30 minutes from your house, sleep there for the night, and just kind of take these small steps until you get to a big thing.
Yeah.
Because it could seem really overwhelming to say, like, I'm going to go hike this 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 mile trail, or even
Yeah.
a 50-mile trail. But if you break it up into the small chunks, it can be more manageable. And another thing I wanted to say as well is um, backpacking, it has some inherent risks and dangers, but it's not like skydiving where if you forget your parachute, you're done, right? Like you're going to make some mistakes, you're going to forget some gear, but as long as you have kind of the three or four essential items, you're just going to be uncomfortable, which is
Oh,
okay.
yeah. Yeah. And that's how
So
you learn, right? It's being uncomfortable, like getting a bad night's sleep. You start learning, like, well, crap, why did I get a bad night's sleep? What can I do differently next time to make sure that doesn't happen again?
yeah, yeah, great call out. So okay, let's zoom in a little bit now here and talk about how do I get started backpacking from a navigational lens. Let's say I have all the gear. I have some friends who want to go with me. I even bought my food and my stole fuel. How do
Yeah.
I figure out where to go?
Yeah.
What what what?
So for me, if I'm planning a backpacking trip, you know, I will really sit down and first off, I'm going to say like, well, where do I want to go backpacking, right? Like where I'm at. Is it somewhere locally? If I was in Indiana, Southern Indiana, no. But I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona. So am I going to do something locally? Am I going to travel and go meet some friends? Or is there something that's been kind of on my bucket list of places I've wanted to backpack in, like whether it's, Yosemite, Yellowstone, like just to name a few of the cliche places that everybody wants to go backpacking, right? And then for me, the first thing is kind of research stage, right? I'm going to get an idea of like, well, I want to go backpacking in this place. And then I'm going to usually go to something like just regular search engine, Google. And I'm just going to find out a little information on like, okay, well, what is in Nebraska? What can I do in Nebraska backpack? And I'll get like a list of like top 5 things. Then I'm going to get kind of an idea of something that sounds kind of good or maybe in the area that I'm going to be at. And then for me, I'm going to start using something like a navigation app, piece of navigation software, especially like because onX has like the really great tool of being able to search like kind of in the area that you're in. So a lot of times, like if I'm here in town, like I'll open up the app and I'll just kind of, hit the little find me kind of icon and it'll put me there. And then I'll just kind of hit the search and then I'll just start looking everything around me, the discover tab. And that way I can kind of see, okay, well, what's right around me that sounds good. Arizona Trail Passage 33, right? 6.9 miles. Yeah, maybe I just want to go out for a night. So I might look into that, see where it's at, see where my trailhead's at, and then I kind of start planning that way. It might be something that I'm just going to find that already exists, or if I have an idea, like I really like doing a lot of backpacking in the Grand Canyon. I'm really close to the canyon. It's about a 45-minute to an hour drive for me. So in the canyon, there's just, a massive network of trails. And yeah, I can find routes there, but maybe I want to do something myself. That's when I'm going to start the actual planning process and start like, okay, well, where do I want to start? Well, I've already found from my information, there's this trailhead, this trailhead, this trailhead. Now I'm going to go search that area, find the trailhead, and then see what I can route off of that. So really, that's how I kind of do every trip. Is I get kind of a general idea, then I start looking in the area for what trails that maybe already exist that are kind of in the realm of what I want. So, if I know that I can do 15 miles a day and I only got 2 days, right? Then I'm probably going to try to find something around 30 miles, maybe 40 miles. Like if it's 2 nights or something, maybe I'll do 2 15s and my last day out is going to be 5 to get back to my car or to get to a spot to where I can get back to my car, however I set it up, whether it's a loop or it's a point to point. And then yeah, I just kind of go from there. I just kind of plan from there. Whether it's a trail that I find that someone else has done, or if it's something that I'm going to create myself.
Awesome. Let's try to see how that works
Yeah,
in action, because you mentioned a lot of steps there that we can actually do
yeah,
natively
yeah.
on the Backcountry app, which is awesome. It's great. So I'm just going to go to the website, and we have obviously a web app, but we also have a mobile app. So you could do everything that I'm doing now on your phone as well if you didn't want to be on a desktop. But I'm just going to orient us a little bit to what everything is here because there's a lot going on. It could feel kind of overwhelming at first. So here on the left side, we have a bunch of buttons. The Discover card is something that Darwin mentioned. So let's say I'm looking at something around Flagstaff. I can actually type into the search bar here, which is also sometimes called the Discover bar, and fly over to
Cool.
Flagstaff, and I can zoom out and see what trails are around, just like Darwin mentioned. So I can see trails, and they'll actually highlight them, so you can see where they are in relation to Flagstaff or wherever it is that I'm looking. Super helpful, and you could also discover things like regional classics, which I mentioned, which are like the thing to do. And those are vetted by local experts, as we mentioned, people that we actually sent out to collect that information. And these, most of these trails will have really
Amazing.
good, yeah,
It's
great
amazing,
information.
amazing hike. It's good stuff.
Some good.
Anybody think about doing it? That's a great hike.
I just picked a random one. We haven't rehearsed this, I promise. But there's photos, there's mileage, there's elevation gain, there's approximate time. There's also the community like star rating as well as the local expert star rating. There's also comments and trail reports that you can add on them, and you can also see nearby routes. So things that are nearby if you have extra time or want to do something like it because you've already done it. So that's a really cool way to discover trails around an area that you're interested in. If you don't feel like going to Google, or if you feel overwhelmed by what you find, if you say like hikes near Flagstaff, this is a really easy way to find them. Um,
Yep.
you can also download offline maps here, and I'll show that in action a little later, but this will just get sent to your phone, which is awesome. So let's say I do want to, uh, go to Flagstaff for a weekend, I can download the whole area in high or low or medium resolution, and it'll actually send to my phone, which is awesome. And I'll show that in action a little bit later, but that's another piece of this toolbar. And then the last piece I want to talk about is my content. So everything that you save will be here. These tracks, routes, waypoints, and you can also save them as folders. And also when people share stuff with you, you can send them. So here's an example of a trip that I planned with some friends in Algonquin Provincial Park. It was a portaging trip. So we took canoes and we
Oh,
portaged
nice.
between lakes and camped out around them. So super fun trip. Planned it all in onX, executed perfectly because I had them offline, and I could relive it, which is really cool. Um, and yeah, the waypoints can have descriptions with notes, and you can also add pictures, which is really awesome. So that's kind of the left-hand toolbar. The top here, you can see these are the activity modes that we talked about. So Flagstaff is actually a really cool area for these activity modes because you can see we saw all the hikes that are here, but we can also look at all the mountain bike trails that we have as well, which is awesome. And if we go to places that are a little bit more snowy, like let's say Colorado, we can see all of the ski content that we have as well. So we have snow stations, and we also have these beacon guidebooks, which are just areas with a bunch of really cool zones that you can hit up. Each zone has a lot of really deep information about that specific zone. They show ski lines and ascents and descents, and a lot of information there that I won't even pretend to scrap the surface of, but just wanted to call it out. But the other thing about being up here in this top bar is we have something really cool for filtering. So Darwin mentioned that sometimes he doesn't know how far he wants to hike, or maybe he wants to hike a specific distance. This tool is super helpful for that. You can actually filter down to exactly how many miles you want. You can see the trails kind of disappearing on my map as I filter out. So you can find exactly what you're looking for from a distance perspective, depending on where you are, as well as elevation, as well as the high point, low point. So elevation is like how much gain will you have on a trail, and low and high point is actually how high up you will be. So if you want to avoid like a high peak, or you want to just stay high, you can figure that out, which is really cool. Beyond that too, you can also choose specific trails. So if I only want to look at easy trails, I can surface those. Or if I want to see easy and medium, or if I just want to look at the really hard ones, we color coded them, and we also have a way of just filtering out to all of them, which is really cool. Okay, the last piece of the puzzle here is the right side. The right side is kind of like your dashboard. So here you can create routes. We have two different ways of creating routes. We can either snap to them, which are really cool. They'll follow existing trails, like you can see there.
Yeah, that's
Or you
typically
could
how
do
I use it. Do a lot of snap too.
snap to makes it really easy, so you don't have to draw it exactly. But if you do want to draw it exactly, you can too, which is this point to draw. And that means if you want to go off trail or you want to do some funky, um, a funky line, you could do that as well. And you could set the color, and you could also set the style and add notes, and also add it to a folder as well, which is pretty handy dandy. Um, so that's kind of the snap to and the line draw. You can also do area drawing, which is I find really helpful if I'm doing any kind of ski missions and I want to avoid an area, or let's say there's like a place that doesn't permit camping, I'll actually create this polygon here that will be like an area where I'm going to look for camping, or an area to avoid if permits dictate that. So that's super helpful as well. The last two are actually waypoints. So throwing down a specific waypoint on a spot that you want to remember or go back to, or have as a point of reference that you share with others. And we have a lot of waypoint icons, and we have a lot of colors and descriptions, and you can even add photos to those waypoints. So super powerful tool. I generally like to do like campsites or river crossings if water is a concern, but you could also do trail junctions and portages like I just showed you. So that's kind of the toolbar there. The other thing I want to call out is the layers menu. So the layers menu actually has different views. You can look at satellite view, and you can look at hybrid, which combines topo and satellite together to give you kind of the best of all worlds. We also have a really cool feature called recent satellite imagery over here that actually shows what what was going on in your zone as recently as looks like 3 days ago, which is really cool. So this is recent imagery that you can look at for seeing how snow is doing on a place you might want to look at, or how the leaves are changing, and we'll come back to that in a second. Really, really powerful feature for like seeing the conditions on the ground right now.
Yep.
So just wanted to call that out. The other cool part about the layers menu is you can look at trails based on their slope, so based on the elevation change along them, and you can see the colors change there. You can also look at private land, so seeing if you're actually recreating on a public easement, or if you need
Yeah,
to
this is a big
go
one
ahead.
for me being out here in Arizona, especially because like Flagstaff is like in the dead center of like the Coconino National Forest. But even though it's mainly national forest and it's a ton of public land, there's a ton of these like little private spots. And you never know, like, oh, I'm hiking this section of the Arizona Trail or something, and you know what, I'm just gonna make a stealth spot for the night and I'm just gonna camp here. And it's a really great feature to have to make sure that you're not like camping on some like pissed off rancher's land that's gonna, ride his four-wheeler out in the morning and see your tent popped up. So yeah, that is a super powerful tool. I use that a lot out here. And a couple of the other ones that you're going to be talking about, like the historic wildfire, and the wildfire layers, especially living in the Southwest, like that is a huge one for me. Um,
Yeah,
and not even necessarily because of the wildfires themselves. It's more like for the air quality and the smoke, and knowing that like, I living in Arizona, I assume that like during, late spring into the summer into the early fall, like we got wildfires around here, but it's great to have so I can see exactly how far I am from it, and then to be able to turn on that air quality, because there's been so many times where I've been out on trails and haven't had a tool like that. And, I'll wake up in the morning and you'll just be like in a cloud of smoke where it was clear whenever you went to bed, but you wake up and, you can feel it in your lungs and stuff. So it's a really, really great tool to have to make sure that you're staying safe and like you're actually camping in places that aren't dangerous, basically.
yeah, detrimental to your health or safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the
Yeah, there
historical
it is right there.
wildfire. This is for fires that have happened in the past, which is
Yeah,
really
and
interesting. Go
And the
ahead.
historic wildfire is great as well because like I absolutely hate camping in burn areas. And anyone that's ever had to camp in a burn area knows what I'm talking about. The ground is terrible. You got tons of deadfall, all of that stuff. So that's really great to have as well. That way I know like, oh, well, today I only plan on, if say I'm just kind of like going off the cuff with the trip. I know where I'm going to start, I know where I'm going to end, but I'm not 100% committed to how many miles that I'm going to do for the day. I'm like, well, today I'll do like 15 or 20 miles. And I'm looking on the app and I'm like, well, I'll probably stop in the next 5 miles. I can turn that on and I can see, oh, am I going to be stopping in like an old burn area where it's going to be really hard to camp or, or not, which I've used that a lot, like a whole lot, especially around here because we have, I mean, you can see we have so many old
Yeah.
wildfires that have been around here.
Yeah. And just to highlight what Darwin was saying, we also have an AQI layer to show
Yeah.
the air quality. Luckily, it looks like Flagstaff has some pretty good air right
Yeah,
now.
we got some damn good air right now.
The other one is the the active wildfire layer, which shows
Yep.
fires that are burning right now. And we actually just updated this layer to show satellite hotspots. So these little yellow dots are actually an active fire that's burning right now. And the refresh rate is, I think, anywhere from 6 to 12 hours. So this is extremely recent, really powerful tool to have. Luckily, it was actually hard for me to find an active wildfire with these heat signatures because it's cool down in the Mountain West, but super important to check this when you're recreating to make sure you're not
Oh yeah.
walking into an active fire zone.
Oh yeah.
And a nice complement to that is actually the wildfire smoke, which is
Yep.
exactly what Darwin was just talking about, is seeing where that smoke signature is heading
Yeah, you
towards.
you can see right there, even if you're kind of in the area, you're not in the fire, like you can see how far that like, that smoke can really affect you and like how bad it is as it goes out. So if I'm coming down, that's probably the Arizona Trail there if I had to take a guess.
Yep, it is.
Green. Yep, yep.
It
Yeah.
is.
So
This is burning right by the Arizona Trail. And actually, when I checked this morning, there was just a little wisp of smoke. So this has expanded quite fast. And I was able to see that in real time on onX. I didn't go to any government websites, but I actually can click into the wildfire that is being shown, and it will tell me the acreage, the percent containment, the description of the fire, as well as the
yeah.
source. So I can
I
actually
really
look
like,
at.
I love the percent containment because there's actually a lot of times where my wife and I actually just kind of look up like, oh, there's a wildfire. I wonder how contained it is. And like we have a really hard time finding that information just on like Google or something. So like it's great to have on there where I can just pull it up real quick and check all that.
Super powerful tool. I nerd
Yeah.
out on it a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
but yeah, especially for us Mountain West folks, very important. If you have any questions about these layers, there's also a great layer detail card that will kind of explain a nice blurb if I didn't do it justice. We also have a ton of snow layers. I won't get into them too much, but we have a lot of snow and avalanche safety layers that you can turn on. I'll just give a little example of that in more like snow terrain. So we have this layer that we developed called eights, which basically maps terrain based on a bunch of variables, including avalanche runout and potential release area, and gives it a kind of a scale, right, from extremely complex to simple. And that is a really good heuristic for like deciding whether terrain is safe or not. And I actually find myself using both the eights, the avalanche terrain exposure scale, as well as slope angle when I'm hiking, right? Like if I'm doing a
Yeah.
scramble, it's actually really helpful to
Oh yeah.
know where the terrain is steep and where it's more chill, and that'll give you like a really good idea of what's a no-go zone and what's maybe doable.
Yeah, I used a little bit of that at the beginning of this year. I was doing a little mountaineering and winter backpack trip up in Colorado and used it quite a bit. And then that's going to become I have a lot of climbing that I'm going to be doing up in Colorado this year. So that's like super invaluable to me. I'm sure I will use the crap out of that.
Nice. Yeah, I find myself, especially off trail or like peak bagging, it's a really important determination of route finding, right? If there isn't like a clear trail. So yeah, a great tool to have. So that's kind of like, I know that was a long orientation, but there's a lot to it, and I actually skipped over a lot.
Well,
But
there's
that's
one to bump in. There's
yes.
actually one of my favorite features about the app that I use literally every single time I'm planning a trip. I'm going out for a day hike, any of that that you scanned over. And that's when I'm looking at any of these trails, when I'm looking at where I'm at, where I'm going to be going, if I'm planning a trip, like whenever you talk about like, how to start backpacking and stuff, an amazing tool is actually the weather tab. Because if I'm planning a backpacking trip or just a hike, like I'm able to use the weather tab and actually look at the forecast for the next handful of days and get a rough idea of what type of gear that I'm actually going to need for that trip. So I'm not overpacking and I'm not underpacking. That way I can dial my kit in and make sure I have, because I have like a ton of different sleeping quilts. And like, oh, am I going to need my 40 degree? Am I going to need my 20 degree for this trip? Like, how hot's it going to be? How cold's it going to be? Do I need a lot of rain gear or do I just need a basic rain jacket, mainly for the wind? So that has become insanely invaluable to me, being able to actually pinpoint where I'm at, where I'm going, and what the weather is going to, obviously weather can always change, but getting a rough idea so I'm not overpacking or underpacking.
Thank you for reminding me. I always forget how
It's
many
so
useful
good.
features we have, but
So
this is
good.
pinpoint weather. So it's actually weather for exactly the coordinates or as close to them as possible. So you can see like weather can be very different at different elevations and different zones that are quite close to each
Yep.
other, right? Like I can move just a little further down the mountain. It's actually a different weather report, and it will report it out for up to 7 days in advance, which is really cool, as well as on an hourly basis. So
So
yeah,
that
super powerful.
that trip that I did up in Colorado in let's see, it was March, early March. We were going to climb Mount Bancroft, and we had set up base camp. The morning looked good, real clear and stuff. We got out, we started our climb, and we saw some clouds in the distance. Like it was getting a little bit dark, and we had service and stuff. So I used that on that climb, and we actually decided to bail on it. And about I don't know, an hour after we bailed, we got back to base camp, like the top of that mountain just got slammed. So being able
Wow.
to actually use that and like see the weather coming in, because like if I just use like the weather on my iPhone, like the Apple weather or something, it's just telling me like for probably the closest thing in the area, which is probably like Boulder or something like that. But the fact that I was actually able to use that and see like, oh, what's it going to be like? We're at this elevation right now, but we're going here and here's base camp. What's it going to be like there in the next hour? We were able to make a pretty smart decision and not get slammed with the storm. So yeah,
That's
that is
awesome.
to me that is probably probably my favorite feature, just because again I can not only use it at home before I even get out there and make sure that I know what I need and know what I don't need, but also just in the moment, especially when you're doing something. If you're doing a backpacking trip, weather turns, it's like it's not as big of a deal. But as you said, like if you're climbing, if you're going up like a high peak and the weather turning can like turn into, a deadly situation, like having that is just it's amazing.
Yeah. And there's layers of depth to this weather feature too that we won't go into, but like on
Oh yeah,
Tuesday
the
here was a full
moon. The
moon.
moon's good
Yeah.
too. Oh yeah, yeah. I used
I
that out
went,
on the a week ago out on the Superior hiking trail.
oh, that's amazing. Well, I was just gonna transition us over to the Superior Hiking
Nice.
Trail. That's a great segue. So Darwin was super kind and actually
Didn't.
shared with me a trip that he's done. So a lot of times when I go backpacking, I actually ask a trusted friend, colleague, confidant, or even someone on the internet about a trip that they've done. And I can use that as kind of like a starting point or a jump off point. And Darwin was nice enough to share with me a section hike of the Superior Hiking Trail that he did recently. And we did that all through onX, which is really cool. So he created the route and then just shared it with me, and I was able to accept it, which is awesome. Um, so here's kind of the route here, and you can see it's the mileage as well as the elevation gain or loss. But now we can start talking a little bit about how I would plan a backpacking trip if I was going to go out and actually do a section hike of the Superior Hiking Trail. Let's say that this was like my objective. So the first thing that I actually thought of with this was this seems like a really cool spot to do leaf peeping. It's
Oh yeah.
really heavily forested.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm gonna actually open up my recent imagery and I'm gonna
It
go
sucks
back.
too. We were there just a
Go ahead.
little too early. Like the leaves were just starting to turn, and I was just like, "Damn, we should have waited another week, and we would have got all of it."
I think that's what I found when I looked at recent imagery. So I went
Did
back
you?
to kind of like the middle of the fall, middle to late fall, and I saw all of this like really nice brown and
Oh
green
yeah,
right around your route, which is here in black.
yeah.
I can I can change the color here, but yeah, it seems like kind of late October, early November might be a really fun time to do some leaf peeping here. But I have to be careful because if I go a couple of weeks after that, I see a lot of snow around here. So this is near the Canadian border,
Oh yeah. Yep, it's right
on
there at
Lake
the border.
Superior. Yeah. So I probably don't want to be any later than right around now, and I could expect some leaves around, which is really cool. But yeah, maybe take us through kind of like this trip and how you went about tackling it, or how you would plan a trip like this.
Yeah, so I mean, as you guys can see, it wasn't an out and back, right? It wasn't a loop, so we did point to point. And how we did this trip in particular is I landed in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I had some friends there that went and did the trip with. We drove up, and our plan was we wanted to do about, we were right around 30 to 40 miles is kind of what we wanted. It was 2 nights, 3 days. Wanted to get done on the last day. And what we ended up doing for this trip is we actually we parked our car down at the trailhead at, I'm going to say this wrong, and a bunch of people from Minnesota are going to get on me. Grand Maurice, the Grand Maurice trailhead. Did I say that right, everybody? Don't butcher me. I'm from Indiana. Um, Is it? It's right there. Yeah. So we had, and this came from, I did this. Obviously, we could have used onX, and I could have found this trailhead, but we tapped a friend. A friend was telling us like, oh, there's this great trailhead. It's here, and you can, just by doing a little bit of research. And this is kind of where I was saying, kind of like doing a little bit of research. Grand Marais. See, so I figured somebody would get me on that. Yeah, Grand Marais. Sorry. Um, we ended up getting a little bit of information and some data from a friend, and then looked it up and found out that there is a Superior Hiking Trail shuttle that they will pick you up in a certain spot, take you to a certain spot, drop you off, and or vice versa. So what we did was we drove to the trailhead, we parked at that trailhead, and then we got a shuttle. We had set up a shuttle. They took us up to the beginning of our section of what we wanted. As you can see, it started right at a road. I cannot remember what the name of that road was. We got a
Looks like
pretty
Route
late.
16.
There you go. Our Arrowhead Trail Road.
Yeah.
Um, totally out in the middle of nowhere, really close to the border. So we got dropped off there at a main little SHT trailhead, and then we started hiking. And the first day we only did like it was just under 2 miles. Yeah, and this is the through hiker brain in me, by the way. You can see I didn't mark anything because we had no clue what we were gonna. We knew we were gonna get a late start, but we didn't know what time. So we knew that there was some camp spots. So if you actually zoom in on the map, you can see there's tons of little camp spots on the trail. So yeah, you can see that South Carlson Pond. You can see there's Hazel. So these little bitty camp icons. So a lot of times, I get a little cocky and we're like, oh no, we'll start at 4 o'clock and we'll knock out 10 miles, right? We'll hike a little bit into the dark. We'll be fine. Well, we ended up doing about 1.9 miles. We stayed at that South Carlson Pond the first night, which was, am I right? Am I right at one
Yeah, you're
market?
totally right.
Is
Yeah,
it right at one point,
I
probably
can draw it
1.8,
out.
1.9?
Yeah,
Tell
that
me, tell me how
sounds,
good I am.
let's see. I'm gonna draw a route. 1.8.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So the sign was right. Um, so yeah, so we kind of did a smaller day the first day because we actually carried out some, this is very different for me. I know a lot of other people that do general backpacking do this all the time. We carried out like steak and chicken, and like we roasted it on the fire, and oh yeah, it was a luxury, total luxury. It was great. I
That's
needed it.
awesome.
Yeah. So we camped there that night. And then the second day, we got up and we actually did a pretty big day. I want to say we did just over 18 miles, and it would have been to the beach. So we actually camped right on Lake Superior, which would have been, yeah, we would have passed that. Keep going. Yeah, you'll see right when there it is. So I want to say that it was, I can't remember if it was on the map or not. So this is one of those situations where we didn't really know where we were going to go. We thought we were going to stop right before, and there's a campsite right before 61. before you hit the beach. And
Maybe this
it
parking
was,
lot
yeah, we were right by that parking lot. Yeah, see that little offshoot trail?
right here.
No, the next
Yeah.
one.
Oh, this one
Yeah,
right here.
yep. We camped right there in the
Nice.
woods, which looks like
Awesome.
it would be really loud next to 61, but the lake was so loud, the waves were so loud, you couldn't hear a single car drive by. It was phenomenal. Fantastic. But that
That's
was one of those
awesome.
situations where we were thinking about staying at the campsite before the lake. We got to that campsite. It was still pretty early in the day. I think it was that south little come
Oh, this one
over.
right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. We got there and it was a little bit loud. You could actually hear the highway quite a bit from there. And it was still pretty early in the day. We were like, you know what? It's not going to get dark till 7. It's like 4 o'clock. We could probably get in a couple more miles, a few more miles. So we ended up hiking to the beach, thinking we might have to keep hiking, that there wouldn't be anything at the beach. Because for anybody that's here that knows me, here's the shocker of this trip. I used a hammock. I have not used a hammock in over 10 years. So I used a hammock camping setup. So we were like, well, it's a beach. Like if I had a tent, I could camp, but we're not sure. So we ended up just finding a random patch of trees, and that's why we camped right there, which to date, over the last 10 years, it's one of the greatest campsites I've ever stayed in. It was phenomenal. I literally
That's
hung right at the
awesome.
beach. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, we were in there somewhere. Maybe it was there. Maybe I can't remember.
That's
It was one of
awesome.
those little coves. But yeah, camped there that night, that day, and I think that was just over 18 miles. And then the last day, it was a little over 18, probably close to 19 back all the way to the trailhead. So that's what we
Very
ended up
cool.
doing. Yeah, but
Very cool.
it was great to have because especially whenever you're talking about a trail like this, and a lot of these trails that are out in national forest, state forest. So th this was a mix of national forest and state forest. A lot of those campsites, like those kind of official campsites, are on the maps, which is really nice to have because if you're at one campsite and you're kind of winging it, like I do a lot, you can just that morning you wake up, you can click on where you're at and then kind of route to the next one. Be like, well, how many miles is it to the next one? Okay, well, I can definitely do more than that. How many miles is it to this one? So that's typically how I do it. I will kind of just figure out what I want to do, the grand scheme of what I want to do. I want to do 35 miles. Here's where I want to start. Here's where I want to end. And then everything in between for me, a lot of times it's just winging it because I might, the terrain might be easier that day, so I'm able to put in more miles. It might be harder. It might start raining. It might be hotter, super humid out there. So like that second day, like we probably could have hiked more miles if it was nice and cool, but it totally beat us down. So we ended up staying on the beach. So what's really great about it is in the moment, I can route that, especially if I save an offline map. So for that area, when I've routed that out for the general idea of what we wanted to do, I saved it as an offline map, kept it on my phone, and then again, I was able to kind of, day by day say, well, we're here, we're gonna go here. How many miles is it to that point? How many miles is it to that point? And actually use it in the moment, which is really nice.
That's awesome. One
Yeah.
cool thing to call out too is the campsites actually have ranger district information and phone
Yeah,
numbers. So if you're not sure about the policy, like let's say you have
absolutely.
to reserve or pay a fee, you can reach out to the ranger district or the National Park Service directly from our app
Yeah.
and figure it out, which is awesome. It's one that I use very often for planning trips that require having a known
Oh yeah.
location.
Yeah.
The other cool thing too that I kind of glossed over, but it's kind of a big deal is we have really good 3D. And luckily this is quite a flat space, but if you're doing bigger days, elevation can really matter. So for instance, I'm just gonna flash us
Go
back to
back to flag.
Flagstaff.
Yeah. Yeah, so the 3D I use a lot too, and the thing that I mainly use 3D for is actually to follow the trail along on the 3D map because like I said, a lot of times I wing it of where I'm camping. And there's sometimes that if I know that the weather could potentially be bad at night or it's super windy, I don't want to camp on high ridges. I'd rather camp a little lower. So I'm actually able to trace the trail And especially like if you put on the satellite imagery, you can really see how the trail cuts through the mountain, how it drops, how it comes back up. And that way I can kind of plan like, well, I want to find a flat spot so I can actually look on there and see like, oh, well, in a mile, this climb kind of plateaus out a little bit. I bet you I can camp there. And it just gives me a little bit more of an idea for kind of where I'm going and what I'm doing. Um, and then not to mention, like, again, like sometimes I don't want to camp too low because if you've ever camped in a valley and it's super condensationy and you wake up and you're soaking wet, like, so I like to camp a little higher, not necessarily in a valley, but also not on a high ridge in case the weather turns on me. So I'm really able to use how I use the 3D mapping is to really look at the profile of the trail and kind of get a general idea for the area that I might want to be staying in that night, and know
Yeah,
exactly where I can find a good camp spot.
I do the same exact thing, and I'll flip through
Yeah.
topo and satellite just to see what the elevation is doing. And sometimes I'll even flip between government and private land to figure out whether I'm legal. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the
That
government
too.
layer, which I kind of skipped over it, but it will actually highlight public
Look at all that
land and make
government land. Look at all that.
to make
Sweet
sure that
boy.
yeah, we want to make sure we're camping legally and not trespassing. So that's a really good kind of addition to using 3D as well. Just wanted to call that out. But yeah, awesome. Thank you. I know we kind of jumped around, but I think we got a lot of substance in. So the last thing I'm gonna just show really quickly is I'm gonna create the route as you said it because I it
Oh yeah.
sounded kind of fun. I probably wouldn't bring a hammock, but I would
I
see
wouldn't typically
myself.
break a hammock. This was almost a challenge and a dare. So one of the friends owns a hammock company, and I was in an argument with him early in the year, and he's like, I heard you don't like hammocks, or you don't like hammocks, do you? And I'm like, no, I can't stand hammocks. Why? And he's like, well, you should come on a trip with me sometime, and I'll turn you into a hammock lover. And I was like, I don't know about that. And he's like, oh, come on, like, are you scared to do it? And I'm like, all right, like, I'll totally do it. Like, set me up with a system, and let's totally do it. So that's it was, and it's perfect for that Superior Hiking Trail, like hammocks. There's a lot of people that hammock up there because it is just super dense forest with tons of trees.
I'm more of a ground sleeper personally,
I
but
am too.
I
I can't
that,
I
that's
can't admit that I got good sleep the first night. Second night, pretty good. It could have been because of the crashing waves on the beach, but
well, what I wanted to do now is just show off a little bit of the offline. So let's say I have my trip planned out. Thank you, Darwin, for all the data, for all the helpful information on how to get this done. What I would actually do is kind of zoom out onto what I wanted to save for offline mode, and it'll save satellite topo as well as the line that you shared with me and all the waypoints that I made. And I can actually name this. So I'm going to call it the Superior Hiking Trail section hike from Darwin, and I can add notes to that from there too. Darwin gave me some killer tips, um, and what I'm going to do is press save, and it's actually going to save it to my account, and now it's going to be accessible on my phone. So I'm going to do a quick switch here to the phone, and you're going to be able to see um, how that looks on the phone. And I'm just going to share my screen here, and this is my phone here. And it's the same exact uh, product as what we saw on the web map. Has all the same features. My content, all of the layers that we talked about, all of the satellite and topo and hybrid, with the addition of also a tracker, so you can actually
yeah.
create a GPX track while you're out there hiking, and it'll show you the elevation gain, the time, and the distance, and you can share that or look back at some of the things that you've done. But the thing that I want to focus on is the map that I just downloaded. You can see that here. Um, and I can press download there and it'll download my map for me so it's ready to go. And I always talk about this because it's probably the most important thing you can do. All the planning in the world is great, but if you don't have an offline map, you're kind of SOL out there.
Yeah.
So make sure you download your map, make sure you check it twice. We have a really cool button that I use all the time, and that's this go offline. So once my map downloads, I'll actually press this and I'll show it once the download's ready, and it'll just make sure that I actually have that offline capability. It's a way of testing it. It's almost like what I described about like setting up your tent in the backyard, right? This is setting up my navigation in the backyard where there's low risk and making sure that it works while I go out there. I know this is kind of painful. I'm sorry about the slow internet, but while that's downloading, I can just go offline and make sure that my offline map is still working. And you can see up there it says offline. So just wanted to call that out. And everything works the same way as the web map. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like how I use it from end to end. Anything to add, Darwin?
No, I mean, I think that's a super important thing. I've actually done I've done it a couple times where I didn't save it. And then I got out of service and then I had to like kind of keep hiking until I found service again. And then I started downloading it. I did it once in the Grand Canyon, actually.
I've done it way too many times, which is why I call it out. It's the mistakes that you were talking about, right? You're
Oh
always
yeah,
you're
yeah,
always
you got to
learning from
make the
your
mistakes.
mistakes.
Got to.
Yeah, but here you can see that my map has been downloaded. It's on my phone, and I can still access the satellite imagery as well, which is really cool. So, yeah, I think with that, I'd love to do some Q&A really quick if you got time. I know we're bumping up against time, but I want to give folks a shot at talking to us a little about their questions, their needs, their wants, their desires. So. Um,
Ah,
I will also put this up here again for one last opportunity for those joining us in person. Scan that code or go to this URL, and you have 70% off a premium or elite onX Backcountry membership. Super good deal. Um, while we're doing the
crazy
Q&A,
deal.
yeah, where's the wacky weighable inflatable
Crazy
cube man?
deal.
While we're doing the Q&A, we're gonna have Matt, who's helping out, do the giveaway in the background. So stick around until the end of the Q&A, where we're gonna do a spinning wheel to determine who gets an onX Backcountry hat or an onX Backcountry Elite membership card.
Some fine swag.
Okay, let's jump into the Q&A. I'm looking at some questions here. Um, there's, as you can imagine, a lot of questions, Darwin, about water sources on the Arizona Trail. Are you
Oh
surprised?
man. No, I'm not surprised. You were talking about that barrier of entry and people being like scared of certain things, probably one of the biggest ones in Arizona.
Yeah. So what's your kind of go-to like let's talk macro because obviously you can look at resources, you can look at trail reports like I showed there. You can see whether trails go through a water source naturally or if there's a stock pond as kind of like a waypoint or a markup. But what's your kind of macro strategy when it comes to water, especially in a desert region like Arizona?
I mean, that's a hard one, man. That's a really hard one for me. The biggest thing I think anybody can do on that if you're hiking in an area where, you're not on the Superior Hiking Trail where water is just flowing everywhere all the time. I think it's just kind of getting as much information, getting as much data as you possibly can, finding trip reports, finding current things. And there's a lot of water reports. If you're in Arizona and you're on, say, something like the Arizona Trail, there are a lot of like current water reports that you can find. Um, and also just obviously making sure that you're just carrying enough because I have actually had to do some very crazy long water carries. Longest water carry I ever had to do was 50 miles. I was on a bike, so it wasn't crazy bad. It would be totally worse if I was on foot. But yeah, just making sure that you do have enough water. And yeah, it's Casey in the chat actually said that's you can call ranger stations. I've I have found that sometimes doing that, they're not always completely updated because, especially like in Arizona, a water source that's there one day can totally dry up like 2 days later, and not be there. So it is a very uncertain thing. I think it's just really doing as much research as you possibly can. And, I hope to see on something like onX, that a lot of people start putting more trip reports and user feedback on there because honestly, I think that's the best way, right? If you know somebody was there on the same section that you're on, 2 days before you were, and you can see that the date when they left the comment, like there was good water at this source, then you can make pretty good judgment off that and kind of tell like, well, it was only 2 days ago, so there's probably still some water here. And then obviously, yeah, looking at springs, but again, those things are never, it's never a guarantee that a spring's going to be there. So I would like to see for anybody that's watching this, if you use onX, leave as much user feedback as you can, because that is really going to become, I think, the most powerful tool than anything else is getting trip reports from people actually out on the trail, being able to, share that information.
Totally. Yeah, and onX does a pretty good job of showing, this is a stock tank here. And there's also a water source through it. So it gives you like a good idea of where there might be water, but definitely um
Right.
not like prescriptive. Another good one, I'm going to give it another shout, is actually looking at the recent satellite imagery.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
if I know I'm going somewhere where it might be a little drier, like I'm looking at what the conditions are right now, and it looks like way drier than maybe what the regular satellite imagery looks like, right?
Right.
And if I back up a little bit, you can see it'll probably get a little greener and greener as I go. So that's a great way to like see what the conditions on the ground are right now. You might even find that they're still on the ground, right? So that's a good way to not get into trouble from the other end of the spectrum. Instead of not enough water, it's too much water.
Right. If you're hiking, pro tip, if you're hiking around Flagstaff, just know that there's no water. It's super dry up here, super porous. Cow
Okay,
ponds,
this
you can usually you can count on those for really gross, nasty, muddy water. But you know, it's an acquired taste.
there's another question here. Can onX Backcountry help me find BLM lands and free camping? Yes, it can. I think I kind of briefly showed the government land layer, but we also have a lot of resources online. So check our website we have interactive BLM maps near like national parks, for instance. There's plenty of like written word on our website that you can find easily. And you can also just click anywhere. Like for instance, I just clicked on the government land layer. And if I click anywhere that doesn't have a trail, it'll actually tell me about the wilderness, right? So it'll tell me what's allowed, what's not allowed, how big is it, who the managing agency is, and what the rules and regulations are. If I'm not sure, I can click out to this website, or I can call the phone number associated with it, which is really helpful for like figuring out if you're actually allowed to camp where you want to.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do one more question and then we'll hand it off to Matt for the giveaway. This one's going to be more your neck of the woods, Darwin. What's the best battery bank and charging system to keep a phone from dying while in the backcountry?
Best battery bank, Anchor.
What
Um,
what about the MAH? How much how many Ks? 10,000, 20,000, forty
I think it
thousand? What are you
depends on
carrying?
how long you're going out, right? I would say about 90% of the time I go out, I usually carry about a 10,000 milliamp. And that usually gets me like a phone charge, a couple phone charges. I always try to make sure that unless I need to use it, I always try to keep my phone in airplane mode to try to conserve my battery as much as possible, especially like when you're using apps and stuff, right? Because that's going to drain more battery, obviously. But I try to keep it in airplane mode. And with a 10,000 milliamp battery, I can usually get sometimes two charges and then also be able to like charge up one of my cameras because I carry like two camera batteries. I'm a camera guy. I always carry a bigger camera, but I can usually get an extra charge on a battery as well. If I'm going out for longer, or I'm going someplace where maybe it's colder, higher elevations, sometimes I use a 20,000. Um, and that, speaking of like cold and stuff, that also comes down to like where you're putting it at night. Like I always put my battery bank and my batteries. I got to take my battery out of my camera, take my battery bank, and I put them in the foot box of my quilt to make sure they stay warm and the cold is not sucking the power out of them. But yeah, Anchor 100%. For if you're just talking about brands, Anchor, like it's the only battery I'll use from now on. I've switched it up recently and tried some other ones. No good. Anchor. It's they've never let me down. And over 14,000 miles, traveling all around the world, different countries, charging it with different adapters, all that stuff. I've never had an Anchor battery die out on me, not one time. But I've had other batteries die out on me. So go with Anchor,
Nice.
folks. Not hashtag not sponsored by Anchor. Just really, really dig their products.
I'll also reiterate the hot tip about leaving anything that's electronic near your source of heat, which is your body at night, because your batteries will lose charge if they're just left out.
Yeah. A lot of
I've
times
learned the hard way.
I'll take my phone too and I'll like put it in my little chest pocket or something. Or like I'll put it in the pocket, like if I'm wearing a jacket or something to sleep in, I'll put that in my jacket pocket and then I'll put all the rest of my stuff down in the foot box just in case I got to grab my phone quick. I don't have to go like digging around at my feet to grab it.
Yeah, great call. I leave my phone in my chest pocket. I leave my headlamp around my neck, and I also put my filter in a pocket on my body as well,
Oh yeah,
just so it
filter
doesn't
always goes
freeze.
in my foot box. I wrap it in a sock.
Nice.
Yeah,
It sounds like we
delicious
have a
sock
very similar
water.
system.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Thank you, Darwin. I'm gonna pass the mic over to Matt, and he's gonna take us through some giveaways. But if you've made it this far, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you win.
Yeah. Win some nice swag, folks. Ooh,
We have a really fancy system here. So
that
we have
is
all the
fancy.
contestants, and we're rolling for an onX hat. One of five. Here we go. Naomi, congratulations.
Nice. Congrats, Naomi.
Awesome.
Is that a
Okay,
hat?
that's a hat. We're gonna do hats
Nice.
first.
That's a hat, a subscription. Yeah, that's one hat and one onX Backcountry Elite subscription. You get both.
Oh,
Oh,
You're doing
awesome.
oh
five of
wow.
these.
Matthew,
Matthew.
congratulations. Wow. You're getting a hat and a subscription. I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Nice. Crazy
Heck yeah.
deals.
Thanks, Matt, for clarifying. Okay, here
What
we
needs
go.
music? We need music or something.
Can you hum something?
No.
Congratulations, Jason. Nice job. I know, Matt. I never win anything either, but you did this time. All right, two more, I think.
Like on the line. You see that? Peter.
Oh, Peter. Sorry. Sorry, Tom, but Peter, congratulations. All right, last one. Here we go. The anticipation is killing me.
Mike.
Oh, oh, nice. Good call out. Yeah, Mike, congratulations.
Nice.
So all five of you are getting a onX Backcountry hat and an elite membership, which is worth $100, which is awesome. Thank you to everyone else who came here and listened to us talk about how to backpack.
Yeah.
Darwin, any closing words or thoughts?
No, I guess like we started off, like if you're new to backpacking, you're just getting into it. Just get out as much as possible. Use your gear, use these great tools, and learn and just get more confident. I mean, the great thing is like we're living in a world where like you have something awesome like an app like onX where it's all there at your fingertips and it's really just learning it and being comfortable with it. And then, just become more confident in getting out and doing crazier stuff and backpacking in crazier places and getting into the backcountry and enjoying it. And then like once you get more confident, then all that worry and all the crazy planning kind of goes out of your head and you can enjoy the backcountry a lot more whenever you're out there. So yeah, get out, have fun, and make mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. I know that's not usually the best advice that most people give, but that's always advice that I give. Go out and make mistakes, get more confident, and learn to be comfortable in the backcountry.
Well said, Darwin. Thank you so much and really appreciate you spending the time on here with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having. And thanks
Good
for
night,
everybody for
everybody.
coming and hanging out.
Yeah,
See ya.
take care. Thank you.